And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending upon where you're joining us from around the globe. This is Robert Leek, Director of Marketing here at Axient eFolder, and I would like to welcome you to the most recent episode of MSP Ignition, Technical Talent. This is a topic that I am extremely excited about, and I have a couple of gentlemen on the line with me that could probably banter back and forth for about an hour and a half on this topic, if not more. We've all had good hires and bad hires, but I think what we want to do is share with you all maybe some ways to be consistent and things to keep an eye out for. And we're going to dive into that here in just a bit. Just a few housekeeping items first and foremost. We are recording today's episode, and we'll make sure that that's available to you all once we kind of follow up with everything in our communications with you. Subsequently, we're going to do some Q&A towards the very end, but at the same time, we want to make sure that this is extremely interactive. So if you've got some questions or some perspectives you'd like to share with us, just pop them into those question bar on your GoToWebinar agent, and we'll make sure that we can address them as seamlessly as possible. I think that's about all of my housekeeping items, so we're going to jump right into today's presenters. As always, Mr. Tom Watson, the leader of MSP Ignition and our Vice President of MSP Practices here at Axient eFolder. Tom, how are you, sir? Oh, maybe we've got Tom on mute. Tom, are you with us?
Thanks, Robert. I'm here. Looking forward to this.
Absolutely. Thank you. And if we didn't have a technical issue to start us off, I wouldn't know what to do. Also with us and a special guest joining us today is James Beyer, a co-founder and Chief Channel Development Officer with VAR Staffing. James, how And again, it feels like we might have GoToWebinar issues with a mute. Doesn't seem like it. James, are you with us on the line? You know, friends, and out there on the world, I have a love-hate relationship with GoToWebinar. It poses a new challenge each and every episode. But what we're going to do, we're going to keep moving forward. James, if I could just maybe ask you to redial in and hopefully feel free to interrupt me if I'm talking when you jump back in. We just want to make sure that we've got audio. Luckily, we need to touch base on a couple of items as it relates to kind of making sure that everyone understands. At MSP Ignition, one of the things that we're doing with this program is to make sure that you have information available to you across the course of keeping your MSP, your IT service channel business moving forward. And we're going to talk about a lot of great topics on that topic around recruiting and talent today. However, we want to make sure that you understand that we are certainly a data protection company here at Axient eFolder. And it's an evolution that we've been going through really for about a decade and a half. When eFolder was originally built on that backup solution that you see there at the bottom right-hand piece of the screen, file level backup, one of the original data protection solutions in the channel, and something we've built upon ever since that time. But leadership at that moment, as we've gone through and evolved as a company, saw that there was a change and a shift in the way that business was being done, both in the realms of technology as well as how people were doing business. And we knew that we were going to need to protect data in unique ways that we weren't doing so. So we started investing in IP, bringing it into our own suite of solutions, and have evolved into the most robust suite of data protection solutions available in the IT channel. That started with Anchor, a file sync and share solution that is truly so much more. It provides a brandable, very interactive solution for your clients that you can brand, keep your logo right at the front of mind so they always know who is providing these types of productivity tools. But it also comes with essentially file level protection. Some of the negative cybercrime that's out there in the world, and actually allows your clients to manage those issues without even contacting you. We then went down the road with CloudFinder, a cloud-to-cloud backup solution targeted for Office 365. We knew that data was going to be living on-prem, but certainly there was an evolution going to the cloud, and Office 365 really kind of spearheaded that. And as it moved forward, we knew that we wanted to protect that data as well. And so we give you the ability to protect email, contacts, calendar, and even SharePoint through CloudFinder. And it's a great way to add margin to those licenses that I know many of you are selling today. Lastly, we'll focus just a little bit of time on our backup and disaster recovery, our business continuity pillar. And we have two solutions there. And we have two solutions that, as time will go on, will be merged into one. But the second solution, BRC, is part of an acquisition we had just last July, about a year ago. And we're still in the process of bringing them together. But both Replibit and BRC have an opportunity to provide you a disaster recovery option that really fits your client's needs. So whether dependent upon what span of that spectrum client list that you're servicing, whether it be SMB all the way up to the enterprise level, Replibit and BRC can have a really strong value to both you and those clients, especially with BRC for those upper end clients. When you have minutes that actually mean dollars, we give you an opportunity to operate in the cloud seamlessly for your clients. So Tom, I'm going to pass it over to you, but first I just want to make sure, James, have you been able to get back on to have a microphone that is working? Not so much.
Log in as an organizer.
Not so much. Yeah. So we are, Tom, if you would maybe just give us a little bit of your background, and we're going to.
While you're doing that, maybe you guys can reach out to him directly. So thanks everyone. Thanks for coming. We are in our 14th episode of MSP Ignition. To start out, for those of you who are new, just to talk a little about what I've been doing here. I came on board last year in October. I came out of retirement. I had owned an MSP for 15 years in the Washington, D.C. area. I sold it a little over 3 years ago, and I was asked to come back into the MSP world, but this time to talk about what I had done and what I had learned along the way, and to help partners and even people just who want to come along that know eFolder and learn a little about what we can give to you. And that's what I do now. And I'm having a good time. I work with Robert. I also want to give a shout out to Sam Warren, who is manning the controls here. What's going on has nothing to do with him. If there's any problems, little problems with GoToWebinar, which is not always my favorite tool as well. But what we're going to do today is talk a little about what you can do in your business to do staffing and really make it effective and grow profitably, as I have at the bottom there. And I've had the good fortune of getting to know James. I've been to a number of trade shows of late, and we've hung out, and that's been an opportunity to talk about. We really see this in a very similar way. And I want to make one point as we get going here. If I'm starting an MSP today, considering all the factors that we're going to go over, I'm going to be seriously looking at a number of different staffing options. And James is going to give you his perspective, and it's a really good one. And I do believe that he really knows the market, and he knows how to drive MSPs forward with the right talent.
And I think that might be a nice transition. And James, you're online with us, yes?
I believe I'm online now. Does everyone hear me? Or I guess those that can communicate, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Got it.
All right. Success. So, well, thank you. Sorry for the technical difficulties there. We actually prepped about 20 minutes prior to the call, and everything was free-flowing. So something must have happened when we kicked off the webinar. But again, the slide deck that's up gives you a quick bio of who I am. My company, VAR Staffing, we've been in the space for about 8 years. But even before that, we pretty much worked exclusively with channel partners, VARs, MSPs, solution integrators. About 2 years in, we decided, along with my two other partners, that we should brand this, and we did, and we launched our VAR Staffing brand Q4 of 2010. Again, we're just about to hit that 8-year mark. So today, we consider about 700 active VARs, MSPs, and channel partners as VAR Staffing partners, many of which are eFolder partners as well. So we believe that we have a unique knowledge of the VAR MSP ecosystem. We have been to 8 IT Nations, 4 AutoTask Community Lives, 3 DattoCons. This will be our 4th channel con. We're there next week. We're very involved with Ingram. We used to have a partnership with Cynics as well. So we really immerse ourselves in the channel. It's really our secret sauce, if you will. We eat, breathe, sleep, speak MSP. That's who we are. That's all we do. And I like to tell my partners that just as you preach outsourcing to your customer base, that's what we preach to you, the MSP. Outsource this crucial piece of business operations to the experts, just like you preach to your clients. So looking forward to the session today. Sorry for the technical difficulties to kick us off. So,
hey, no worries. We're going to get through them. But thank you so much for the overview, James. Tom, you had mentioned that as we were preparing with James that you guys had aligned on kind of some topics. You want to walk us through a little bit about what we're going to be covering today?
Absolutely. So I like to start these things out with really giving you guys what a lowdown is so you can kind of focus in at the right moments. But I mean, we got a really hot tech market right now in terms of labor, and we're going to talk about that. And we're going to get into specifically what MSPs are doing to retain that talent, because it's not the same thing that they had to do a few years ago. It has changed drastically. It's changed even quite a bit from when I owned my MSP. And I'm going to really focus in on that because, like I said, I like to focus in on what would I do now to really make it rock if I had an MSP or starting one. And then we're going to get into objections. That's a big one. I really like to focus on that. And then timetables and, the close. All you guys out there that are listening in, you know how to close business. Well, those same rules, some of them apply, but it's a little bit different. And we have an expert on the line about that. James will give you some really good tips on how to close those top candidates. Make sure you don't have those guys go into your competition.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to a little bit on that closing top candidates. I think we have all experienced the fact that it's becoming a pretty competitive job market out there for employers as much as those candidates. So looking forward to that for sure. We're going to roll through to a quote from Steve Jobs. It doesn't make sense to hire smart people and tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do. Steve Jobs, I think one of the more innovative people in our space as it relates to technology. Tom, James, anything you want to share about kind of this perspective?
Well, what I really liked about it is, he's known for his arrogance and kind of even bullying and stuff like that. What a lot of people don't know is that when he ran Apple, this was something he really went by, and that's why they are where they are at this point. He's gone for many years now, and look, they're still killing it. And that's an example of when you bring the right people in to build your business. Well, I mean, even when the founder's not there or when he's not present, you can have smart people run that business for you, and that's dependent on the decisions you make when staffing your MSP.
And on that note, we'd like to start things off just with a little bit of interactivity. So for the audience members out there, we're just curious, how do you primarily source your new job candidates today? We've got a few options there: word of mouth, Craigslist, Monster, etc. Just take a few moments. We'd love to just kind of get that perspective from you. James, in your experiences today with those people before they start working with you, where are you seeing a lot of activity before their VAR staffing relationship?
It's a great question, and it's one that we typically lead off any onboarding or discovery call that we take with a potential new partner. And believe it or not, and before, I don't know how many have taken the poll, but by far the number one answer that we hear when we do ask that, and we do that plainly, how do you go about finding talent now, is typically Craigslist. And there are several reasons that people give us for that. And probably the number one reason is that it's worked in the past. And you know what? It can work. And that's great. But when we try to provide counsel to an emerging and growing MSP, it doesn't make sense to use that as a scalable model. If you're going to use the same platform that you would use to find a used refrigerator or microwave oven, it just doesn't make sense to have that as a long-term growth strategy, for your onboarding. We've taken partners from, employee number 4 to employee number 40. And that's tough to duplicate or have really tangible success, on Craigslist. Word of mouth, probably the best way. And by that we mean you have a great top performing employee. Well, of course you're going to say, hey, do you have any friends or colleagues that you can recommend? Again, it's worked in the past, so that's how we try to do it. Well, guess what? That has a shelf life. That will burn itself out by far. So again, there's a lot of different ways. The advice and counsel we like to give is not a blanket statement. This is our best practices, what we've learned through our many years of doing this with channel partners all over the country.
Yep, and just some results from our poll. Craigslist was certainly number 2. It was coming in at 25%, so not the biggest piece. Most of the audience that are close to 60% using Monster, LinkedIn, etc. So looks like some diversity, a lot of online focus there, with word of mouth and other staffing companies coming in at 8% each. So a lot of diversity.
I know there's some content coming up about that point at Monster, Career Builder, ad response. We'll get into that a little later in the session, but that's good to know. Thank you, Robert.
Of course. And James, is there anything you want to touch about? I know I mentioned it earlier, kind of when we were talking about closing, that it's a pretty competitive job market out there for both candidates as well as employers. We're looking at some stats here on the screen. Anything you'd like to highlight specifically about some of the, kind of current states or challenges?
Yeah, I think that the unemployment is low. The economy is robust right now. But in particular, if you even drill it down to just pulling out those tech-centric jobs, under 2%, that translates to virtually no unemployment. So there needs to be a real go-to-market strategy to your growth as an MSP begins to grow. And you have to take a realistic lens of what that means, of less than 2% unemployment in your space. What does that mean when I try to attract candidates? And we'll get into that here in a little bit as well, Robert. But yeah, keep that in mind. That's a very powerful statement right there. Virtually no.
Yeah, Robert, I'd like to touch base on the slide a little bit. Way I look at it is this, is what I tell people. People might like this, but we work in IT. Everyone on this call does. This is the hottest industry in the world. It's the hottest industry ever. Here's the deal. The unemployment's 1.9%. If you own an MSP today, you are fighting for talents. And so what that means is you need to have, it's fine if you have Craigslist. It's fine. I hear Facebook does jobs now too. LinkedIn. You need to have all those things, but you know what? You need to have different points where you use those different tools and understand at some point, to get the best talent, you better have a plan to go out and get it. And that's what we're trying to give you, the basis for that, either through what you learned here or professionals. But you need to really go at this, because if you don't, with that kind of unemployment level, you're going to miss the top talent, because someone else, the guy across the street, he's going to have a plan for getting them.
Yep. And, I think this is really touching on the key to the recruiting aspect and some of the challenges that IT channel service providers encompass. But, I'm going to bring up our next slide, because I think it's about the retainment that we're going to focus on today that sometimes people get lost in. Tom, I don't know if this was your namesake or not, but Thomas Watson Sr., former CEO of IBM, once said, recently I was asked if I was going to fire an employee who made a mistake that cost the company $600,000. No, I replied, I just spent $600,000 training him. Why would I want someone to hire his experience? Tom, as a former MSP owner, I'd love to have your perspective about, people who've left your employees that had left the business and kind of what they walked away with.
Well, Robert, I just couldn't resist when I saw this quote about employment and staffing, because first of all, yeah, Thomas Watson, a lot of people like to bring up the golfer as my namesake, but the one I like to hear, because I'm in IT, is the original CEO of IBM, who was at the time also considered the greatest salesperson in the world. And this guy knew what he was doing. He knew how to build a company and build teams and motivate people. And this is a good point, because owning an MSP, I had some guys do some things, drop servers, I had a guy who used to fall through ceilings all the time. I mean, like crazy stuff. But you know what? I never got rid of any of those guys for some of this stuff that happened. I mean, I'd cut a check and fix it, whatever. But, because what it comes down to is you bring one of these people into your MSP and you cross-train them on 30 to 100 networks or whatever you do. The learning curve is huge. You need to find a way to retain that experience. And even if it costs you a little something, it may cost Thomas Watson and IBM $600,000. And this, I think that quote's from the 30s. So I don't know what that is adjusted, but it's huge. But it's a good example of take these skills, find the right people, and learn how to retain them. We're going to get into that a little bit later too.
Awesome. And we're gonna move on. I think really start getting into the meat of the most interesting information here, and looking at types of candidates. And James, I'm going to pass the mic to you. Step aside and just kind of let you talk us through this perspective of active and passive candidates.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. And this dovetails off, I guess, the survey that we took. So there's really two types of buckets that we like to associate candidates with. You can see it there on the deck, active and passive. So, and I'll walk you through both briefly. Now, what's an active candidate? Now, as most of you replied to in the survey, Monster, Career Builder, LinkedIn, or we like to call an employment-centric website, what was your number one source for finding candidates? Well, typically, those candidates that resonate to that are what we like to call active candidates. Their resumes are on a job board. Maybe it's a contractor whose project is nearing completion. Somebody recently got let go or laid off. There was a reduction in force. Okay, they're active. There's other bullets on there that we could put there. They could be management change within their organization that now has them on the look. Well, the active candidate is one that is most likely to respond to a job ad. An active candidate is one that is advertising or broadcasting themselves. And there are a lot of those, and there is a lot of there are a lot of good finds amongst that active candidate pool. And for any staffing firm to tell you they don't source or fish in that pond is simply untrue. But where we like to resonate a little bit more, so let's call it 51% or above the time, is what we call a passive candidate. And what is that? Okay, well, first and foremost, a passive candidate is a top performer at your competitor right now. Okay, that person may not have woken up this morning thinking, wow, I may be looking for a new job. Okay, that they may not have a resume put together at all. Okay, they could be, we use the quick analogy, unaware that the grass is greener across the street. Okay, so that is a candidate pool that is very difficult to penetrate. Certainly with ads, or job postings on websites, and certainly if they don't even have a resume put together, they may not even know how to go about finding that job. So what I challenge my team with is finding those candidates, attacking and fishing and hunting, on that reservoir. Find those candidates, and it is not difficult to find them, believe it or not. It's difficult to engage them, and even then more so difficult to have them explore a new opportunity. But if we can get into that and drill that down, that passive candidate market, that's where the game changers often lie. That is a real nugget that you can be able to extract if possible.
So James, what I'm hearing here is a little bit from kind of the MSP owner's perspective is that probably out there when they're looking for new talent to bring on into the firm, probably more into that active space. However, sometimes the people you're really looking for might actually be more on the passive side, and that's the reason it's good to engage people who are used to playing in those passive waters. Is that kind of something to take away with?
Yeah, I think it's, an active candidate is one that's probably a little easier to work through the process. An active candidate, may have recently or within the short term, a year or two, have already gone through a search. Maybe they joined an outfit that wasn't quite what they thought it was going to be. So an active candidate is oftentimes easier to engage, easier to logistically flow through the process. The passive candidate is one that again, if positioned properly and engaged and brought through a clean and sound hiring process, is one that will accelerate and be able to be the most impactful with the shortest amount of ramp possible.
Yeah, and so we're gonna kind of talk about where to find the candidates. We did get an interesting. Yeah, please, Tom.
Yeah, the way I look at it is, I got a lot of I got a lot of my talent from, I'd have a technician. I would constantly keep up with my techs and be like, hey, who do you know, and what are they doing? And stay in their ear about that. And, occasionally someone, hey, you know what? I got a buddy over here, and I think maybe he's not too happy. He's not looking yet. And that's a passive candidate you want to pounce on in that kind of situation.
Gotcha. All right, and we're going to turn our attention now to where to find candidates. James, we just want to let you know that we did get a question or more of a statement from Davidson. He's realizing that he's hopefully picking up a lot, but maybe you're targeting his talent from his MSP.
Well, that is a question we get a lot. So if we engage with a partner, we then no longer would source from that partner. And I think at the beginning in my bio or my intro stated that we currently count about 700 active partners, and by any publication it varies, but we usually use the number 20,000. So there's about 20,000 channel partners nationwide. So if you just do the math, the odds are we're probably not working with you. So so again, the retention aspect that we've kind of glossed over, we'll go into a little bit more. Hopefully the retention piece is there, and you're able to satisfy your top performers. And if by chance I do pick up the phone or engage with them, they're so happy they politely say no thank you. And we get that a lot too, by the way. So there are guys out there.
And David, we'll be giving you those clues as we get further into the deck. Right now we're looking at the list of really the responses from that question. Tom, James, anything you want to highlight specifically about where to find candidates? I think there's some we've talked a little bit about already, but any last points on this kind of sourcing?
Yeah, Tom mentioned it, using that, and it may not even be buddies. We're going to get into this here in a little bit, but if you send one of your senior engineers to a training class, and then maybe during that class, maybe it's a boot camp, maybe it's a multi-day class, they would then engage with somebody there. Empower them in those situations to keep the ears and the eyes open. And if they see somebody that seems to be a very competent operator, engage them. And that's another way to dovetail off what Tom said. Use your existing talent, your top performers right now. Use them, as a recruiting tool. Not just with their known associates, but they may be in chat rooms or forums or training sessions, boot camps. Allow them the autonomy to, hey, look, this guy's a sharp shooter. I saw the way his mind works. We should think about bringing this guy in.
Awesome. So we've talked about the types of candidates. We've talked about where to find candidates. Let's talk about how you get started. James, what's you want to walk us through maybe that first step from an MSP's perspective as it relates to starting to fill the need of a new role?
Yeah. So once an MSP has determined that yes, we need this position, it's critical. We would then create, like I'm sure many of you do with your partners, kind of a go-to-market strategy. What do we do? What's our process? What's our plan? Well, that plan obviously starts with a job description. There's a lot of job descriptions out there. You can simply Google systems engineer and come up with several thousand, I'm sure. But some of this slide, I think, hopefully it resonates with you to just how do you put together the best job description that gets you what you're looking for. So, and I think it pretty much goes without saying. I'd like to start from the bottom up. Keep it simple, stupid. I have seen 2 to 4 page job descriptions that list every technology and every scenario that could ever be thought of in a job description. Well, that turns into a situation of white noise. And what happens then is just like we don't really have static on TVs anymore, but back in the old days when we did, you can't even make out what's real there. Okay, so what we always advise is a good 1/2 to 3/4 page job description. Hit the highlights. Okay, we don't need everything under the sun. We want the core components of this job. Okay, put it in there. Use that as your primer, and then go from there. And you would be surprised how less in this situation is many times more. It will get you much more of what you're looking for.
Yeah, and James, I'd just like to throw in there that I looked at what other people were doing years ago for job descriptions, and I would see people would have this laundry list of tech. And ultimately, you're trying to find someone who has knowledge, a lot of aptitude, and it's going to be a good fit in your organization. You put a big list of tech out there, I'll tell you what, of all of these different certifications or skills or software packages, you're going to turn some people off because they're going to read that and they're going to see one or two that they are not familiar with, and that might be enough for them not to contact you. So I would stick to what's really important job duty-wise.
Sometimes it can be 10 or 12, and then all of a sudden they get again, there's just information overload, and oh my God, I'm not a fit for this because I don't have these 10 things. Well, to Tom's point, those things may be, duty number 20 or 30 on your duty list, and you just put it in there because you thought put enough out there and see what comes back. So,
yeah, hey, go with less. Have a simple description. Try to look for the right people, and go that way. I will say also, just to touch back to that last slide, when my techs brought me in other techs, people they knew especially, I had a program for it. I've talked to you guys before about referral programs. I had referral programs internally, and I paid my people when they brought me top talent. So that's important to remember too.
And Tom, that kind of takes us into a little bit of the next topic, but we'll jump right into the interview piece, right? We've got a job description, we've got a pool of candidates. Now comes the interview. 3 fundamental types of interview questions, and I think this kind of breaks down into some specific pieces. James, you want to walk us through that? And Tom, I'd love to have your perspective as kind of how these things applied to you when you were interviewing for candidates, not too long ago.
Yeah. So real quick, everyone can see them there. We have 3 buckets of questions that we advise our partners to try to stay within these buckets. Okay. So the experience questions, that's probably your what we like to call your tech. Okay. So you may have a senior engineer. It may be the owner that is the chief technical operator at the MSP. So that's where you want to throw out kind of the tech questions, if you will. But, and I'll get back to this in a moment, sometimes we can extract from these other 2 questions that tech is probably the easiest thing to teach or embed within a candidate. What aren't quite as easy are the next 2, the behavioral questions. Do they perform well under pressure? Can they work well in a team? We call it the pace issue, and it's one of the easiest, or I guess I shouldn't say it's that easy, but we very quickly can identify if a potential candidate can keep up with the pace of an MSP. It's part of our secret sauce, really, at VAR Staffing, is that we can assess pretty well that yes, this candidate does have a propensity and can keep up with the pace. Well, many times if they're existing and performing well at another MSP, that's an indicator that they would do well at your MSP. Critical thinking. Sometimes those are, I have one partner here in the Dallas area that likes to give 3 riddles. 3, I call them brain teasers, but 3 riddles. And the exercise is designed not to see if the answer can be gleaned correctly. It's designed to see how the candidate thinks. Do they use the scientific method? Do they walk up or take a piece of paper, walk up and write on a whiteboard, or get a piece of paper and write it out and try to walk through the problem? Like the saying at NASA goes, work the problem. That is what this partner tries to extract. Or do they just immediately call a lifeline, right? So so again, these are the 3 buckets of questions. It's our experience that number 1, the tech question, is actually the easiest to install. If they've got 2 and 3, the behavioral and the critical thinking, that is an indicator that you have a strong candidate that can perform well and will likely be able to learn the tech, whatever it looks like.
Awesome. And
great.
you
offer a little perspective here of how I handle these interviews. First of all, I would do these interviews. I'd often had a quick interview, or one of my people had, with the candidate to set up coming in. I preferred to have some type of voice contact with someone and get an impression off of that, because you're hiring technicians for MSPs. They are going to be on the phone interacting with your clients. I would have them come in. I would have them come into my office, closed door interview. I did not have people coming in and out with paperwork and all of that kind of stuff. I remember that from the interview days. It's annoying. I would focus on a couple of key issues. One, have you worked in an environment where there were multiple networks that were disparate? Are you comfortable in that, or are you talking to someone who needs to be working in one place, same repeatable experience, and stuff like that? Because we all know out there who own MSPs, as much as you might try to homogenize the networks you're running, you're going to have a whole bunch that are different. Got to have people, as you know, that are flexible. I tried to establish early on, are they flexible in mindset? Are they going to be able to handle that well? Some don't. Behavioral questions, I try to hit them up with, do they have a knowledge of customer service? And is it something that they have a passion for? Do they enjoy interacting with people? Or are they people that are just techs? Because MSP technicians are going to have to be people, as we all know, who are out there interacting and have social skills. And then what I would do is I would not indicate to anyone that I had a technical background. They probably looked me up at that point and saw just all the business stuff I was doing. I'd moved off from tech, but I was a network engineer for a dozen years before I even started doing the business side. And then I would hit them with a couple of pretty pointed technical questions right there. I focused in specifically on Active Directory account management questions. Hey, where do you go to create this in Active Directory? And I'd give them probably a simple TCP/IP question. And honestly, those two questions, if they flunked both of those, there was no way I was going to hire them. They were very basic indicators to me. Does this person have even this core knowledge? So that they can't answer these, there's no way they can handle the work we're doing. And I kept those interviews to 25 to 30 minutes. And generally at that point, there were sometimes follow-ups, but generally, as we'll get into after this, I'm at the point where I'm going to make a go, no-go decision.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, Tom. And just as, you know, someone who's gone through the hiring process myself, I think your point about your two basic questions, I think it also provides a baseline. And if you know, every interview will be different to some degree, but I think if people go in from the interviewer perspective with a few key questions that'll be consistent across all candidates, that'll give you some way to benchmark people as well. So to make sure that they have the grasp and understanding of what you're looking for, as well as to make sure that they, you know, maybe can elevate themselves comparatively to some other people. So, Tom, James, anything else specifically on the interview piece?
I think that's it.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. Good coverage there.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the flip side. So, you know, obviously we're trying to find top talent, recruit them and keep them. But at the same time, as we've talked about, it's a very competitive marketplace. And while a candidate might be interviewing with you, whomever, you know, out there in the audience, they could very well be interviewing with another MSP, another IT company, someone else in technology. So it's almost a two-way street. While you're certainly trying to vet them, they may be trying to vet you as well. James, do you have any kind of recommendations for people on how to help their business stand out if they're the candidate that's at a crossroads?
Yeah, so this deck would probably be the retention piece. So perhaps some have joined for that for these golden words here, but I would certainly highlight this. And you know, for David who asked if I was maybe poaching his shop, I don't know. We can touch base after this, David. If you'd like to give me a call, we can figure it out. So, but here is some advice that we would like to put in front. You know, again, this is the retention piece here. So focus in. I'll walk through each. So highlighting unique opportunities that your company offers. Now, what does that mean? Okay, so you know, for smaller partners, again, we work with partners of all sizes, but smaller partners themselves do have that uphill battle. I'm not the big guy. I'm smaller. You know, even the larger 20, 30, 40 man MSPs, they still compete with the banks and the hospitals and the university systems and whatnot that are these mega behemoths. Well, I believe that the MSP has a tremendous offer that it can make to to the candidate pool. For example, exposing a candidate to multiple different networks, becoming a true generalist. Okay, yeah, you're going to use the same basic stacks, but they're going to be able to not silo themselves. We see that a lot when we go out for MSPs and recruit, that they're looking for a senior systems engineer. Well, we can find one, but at that bank, that's more or less the exchange guy or the email guy. So you get siloed at these larger organizations, where here you're going to dip your toes into everything. And naturally, you're going to resonate towards a couple of disciplines that you have a larger strength in than others. And you may then become the exchange guy at an MSP, but you're going to be exposed to just about everything that any network could have. Compensation, another big variable that sometimes needs to be overcome. So, I'm not going to, I'm going to give it to you straight up. The market is white hot, and oftentimes I will debate with MSP owners, hey, I've got a guy doing that right now making $10,000 less. There's no control that I have over any given market. Candidates provide their information to us. We relay that to you, and then you get to make the choice. Our advice, obviously, is to make a competitive offer. We'll get into that a little bit later. But sometimes compensation, there are things that may resonate more heavily than compensation. Paid time off, benefits. Those are just a couple of things. At my company, VAR Staffing, we're privileged enough to be able to provide 100% of benefits. I've got 12 people that work here. So it's not as if I'm that large, but that's one of the things we believe in as a company culture, is that you, as an employee here, we pay for your health insurance. Okay, that's not possible for everybody, but that's surely something that I'd like to highlight. Paid time off. We are liberal to an extent. We don't like being taken advantage of. Again, I'm speaking as an entrepreneur here for my small business, but we're very liberal. If you're getting your job done, you give us enough notice, we can flex on that time off. If you want to take a Friday or a Monday and take your girlfriend out of town or whatnot, great, do it. We can do that. And many times you can trade that for compensation. That flexibility, that culture is one that does resonate loudly. And then finally, your culture. We hope and think that people like coming to work at our respective companies. Okay, there are many things you can do to help, hopefully, hammer that home. Having a loose work environment. The happy hours on Thursdays. The foosballs on Fridays. These are all great things, but please know that nowadays, especially kind of with this millennial generation, some of those things, these candidates expect that. The fact that you do that and you highlight that is great, but it's not necessarily different from what they are already experiencing. So, these 5 points are just but a few retention tools that we like to preach. And again, each company, each MSP is unique. So I suspect that everybody has these little nuggets that they like to do for their employees. Make those shine. Highlight those during the interview process, because just as you're interviewing a candidate, rest assured that candidate is interviewing you.
Yeah. Tom, was there any nuggets that you'd be sure to highlight in those interview processes back in the day?
Well, yeah. I mean, what I've tried to do is get across to people that this is small business, and this is the extension of me and my family, and you're going to be a part of it. And when things happen, I'm going to be a part of it. If you're sick, don't come into work, because I don't want you to make me sick or the client sick. And I'm not going to ding you up for that. I didn't do sick leave. Just don't come in. PTO, yeah, I gave you a couple weeks to start off, and you gain, days as it goes. But in reality, you need more time and you're getting your job done. Take what you need within reason. I tried to make it like that. I tried to cover people and get it. It goes more to retention, but I had a guy who actually moved for me as part of a federal program, and he lived in a place, and then they had to drive more, and his wife's car broke completely. He was done. in 2 days, I started having fleet vehicles. Covered that. I mean, I made it clear to interviews coming in that I would do things to make their lives easier and to make it so they could work, and highlight what you do that's different. This is a hot job market. If you have some extraordinary benefit, make sure they know about that, because someone else might not, and you might tick it in their head that you're the right one to go with because you're doing something, you're giving them something that they've always wanted.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like, being flexible, making sure there's an awareness. A lot of good takeaways there, guys. I appreciate it. Let's talk about candidates' common objections. Sorry, not objectives, objections. Maybe the other side of that coin, especially in this hot market. What are you guys' thoughts about how to handle things like, can I work from home? Your benefits aren't as strong as. James, you touched on that a minute ago.
Yeah. So we've glossed over, this slide pretty well, but you get into an interview situation. You're advancing with a candidate, and these are questions that oftentimes crop up. And how do you win that candidate? So we hear this a lot. We've talked about really 2 and 3 already. Can I work from home? It's becoming more and more chic nowadays, as obviously the technology that we all deploy, the royal we here deploy, allow for that type of functionality, working from home. It's now more and more popular. Brick and mortar is becoming less and less necessary. And I like to look at that and say, look, when you look at a bullpen or a collaborative environment where tickets come in and sirens go off and you've got a dashboard up and you're looking at it, you probably have to feel that at some level for some duration of time to be able to understand, again, that pace. If you're working from home, you're easily distracted. Yes, you can let a top performer do that, but that's something that I always like to say, hey, look, let's sweat into that. Working from home, if that is a true variable for a candidate, look at them and say, yes, let's work towards that. Let's get a goal to get there, but let's not expect that on week 1 or month 1. You've got to earn it, sweat into it. Once we get there, and we know how each other work, I can see your workflow, your KPIs are measurable. Then we can talk about, okay, a day or 2 from a week you can work from home. The benefits, again, they are what they are. I suspect some people on the call use a PEO or some type of outsourced benefits provider. Sometimes there are tremendous benefits for the employee. Trust me, I know the PEO model a little bit. It's quite expensive for the employer, but again, it's a benefit. It's a sacrifice that you, as Tom said, it's small business. Everyone's in this together. That's just a benefit that I give, a cost of doing business, so I can try to keep my business profitable and grow. Smaller work environment, again, highlighting the fact that being able to be not just a siloed master of one craft, you have the ability to be a master of many, and you will gain domain knowledge and experience on not one static network, but dozens, if not hundreds of networks that will, again, sharpen your sword.
Yeah, it's really great information, James, and I think I'm going to take away something from this call. If nothing else, is going to be the term sweat into that, because I like the direction that's going. I'm going to push us through to the next slide, somewhat apropos of the fact that we have about 10 minutes left on today's session, and we're going to talk about accelerating your timetable. So I'd love to both your perspectives, James, kind of in the world of kind of making it happen quick today in today's hot market, and Tom, some of your perspectives as to moving things forward.
Yeah, so these are some quick pointers. Getting through. How do you push? How do you get success when the mission of any engagement is to hire the employee for whatever the job is? And these are some real quick nuggets that we like to throw out that we believe partners can use, whether they use us or not, to help ensure success. And combining interview rounds. If you do some type of phone call, testing, face-to-face, then a final face-to-face, you can mash a couple of those together. You can issue a test remotely. You can get or if you do, have them come in, interview, and test on one of your workstations. Okay, check references early. I don't mean you do a phone call, the guy vetted well, sounded good over the phone, let's check references now. What I mean is, as we get towards the end, don't let that reference check be the barrier to making an offer. You're going to know as you progress, and certainly we can help counsel that and help flow the process. But once we're getting close, yeah, I think we got one here, James. All right, well, let's, do you check references? If so, let's get those going now. That way, once he comes in and meets with you tomorrow, we can move quickly. Move quickly with top candidates, guys. I'm telling you, if you're falling in love with them, the chances are high that somebody else is as well. Don't drag feet. Don't think that they're going to hang around for a week or two while you cross your T's and dot your I's. First offer, best offer. And this really is imperative nowadays. Again, the old car salesman deal where you go back and talk to your manager and start $5,000 low because you need to come up. I really preach against that. We can talk offline if anyone wants some advice on that. I've got some best practices there. I think we even have some white paper that we published on that. Make a strong offer, make that best offer first. Really, really do. And then make sure or check and see, as the interview process concludes, ask the question, is there anything else that you need to know? Sometimes it's as easy as, yeah, give me your benefits. Sometimes it's a little bit more complex, but you'd be surprised. Take that objection away from a candidate to make that decision. Ask them, is there anything else you need to make a decision?
Yeah, I would just trying to throw one real quick thing in here. If I have a candidate come in and we've had our interview and I think he's really great, I might check a couple quick things, check with other managers of my company, but you know what? I'm not going to miss out on that. And I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call that candidate and I'm going to tell them that I enjoyed the interview, what I liked about it, and I'm going to make the offer right then, follow up with an email. I'm going to get it done. I'm not going to waste time.
And to dovetail off that real quick, my advice is don't rush into an offer. So, and I think Tom is, I speak for Tom as well. But if you've done your due diligence, especially if you're working with a firm that does a tremendous amount of due diligence just to get a candidate in front of you, and then the stars are aligning and everybody feels good, you've followed your process. Go ahead and trust your gut. And to Tom's point, get it out, go.
Yep.
Yeah,
and
we're gonna. My thing was, I was almost never. For active candidates, I was always talking to people that had multiple offers. I was in the D.C. area, federal government contractors. It was always hot, and so my point is, when you're ready to go and you've done all of your homework, don't let that person wait. I mean, if they're sitting there for days, and they hear nothing, you're probably going to lose out.
Hey, let's
and we've actually just put a poll up.
Yeah.
And we're gonna let people just sit on this for a few seconds, and then we're gonna jump right over. And James, I think your perspective is very interesting here on retention. That's our next topic. We're gonna squeeze this last little bit into the last.
We did get another retention slide deck in, so that's good. These are some follow up on some of the talk track that we had earlier. Some really good nuggets. The review period, you'd be surprised. Setting an earlier review. Standard reviews are a year, 12-month review. Sometimes you do a 6 or a 9 month. Try a 90-day review. Watch what happens. It does two things. It allows you guys to reset expectations, and then it allows an open dialogue of how things were in my first 90 days. Well, we know the first couple weeks is going to be a whirlwind, and just getting to know where the bathroom is and where the break room is and how things work. But as we get to that 90th day, we really should know at that point in time, this is what I'm seeing. Is this standard? Is this not standard? Conversely, you as the employer or the manager can see that as well. Hey, look, it's taken you too long to close these simple level 1 tickets. What's going on? And you can really be able to set up a real good strategy on how to grow that candidate. This is something that we've seen over the last, probably 2 years. Setting up an internal mentor or coach. And that's not a direct supervisor. That's somebody, even at a 10-person shop, it's somebody that may be a senior technical lead. This is an informal job title. They are basically, hey, look, if you have any questions on how this works, you may not want to go to me, the owner, or my service delivery manager, my lieutenant. This is somebody that they can bounce ideas off. Is this the way it always goes down? Again, it empowers that internal coach gives them some additional responsibility and puts a layer in front of the hierarchy that exists in your MSP. Have a sound day one strategy. What does that mean? Well, if you issue polo shirts, iPhones, laptop, have it all on their desk, their workstation, have it ready to go. Maybe have a care package with some Red Bull or some 5-hour energies in it. Again, just have some little welcome package is an example of a good day one strategy. It's going to set the table and really be a predictor of success. Continuing education. This is something that we preach a lot. It really is, I think, one of the top keys to retention. Have a plan for that candidate. Here's how we get you from a tier 2 engineer to a systems engineer to a solutions architect. Here's how we do it. Okay, a lot of times you can wrap that around certifications, OEMs, Microsoft, Dell, Cisco. They all have certification tracks. Sponsor, pay for that. When they achieve different status, take them out to for happy hours, celebrate them. Again, that is a game changer. That is you investing in them, and by doing so, it makes your MSP stronger. You now have a CCNP on staff. You now have an MCSE on staff. So again, that has helped define that career path, where they can go, empower them. It also gives them enough rope to hang themselves. If they can't hit those benchmarks, I can't move you up. We talked about that. That's part of our strategy. I know we're tight on time, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I said one thing to add. I said one thing to add real quick, guys. Lots of Red Bull. Thanks.
Always.
And on that note, we are kind of winding things down. We want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to get pointed towards the takeaway, which is thanks to James and the folks at VAR Staffing. James, you want to talk to us a little bit about the ebook that folks can download from their GoToWebinar page right here?
Yeah, so there's a lot. I mean, obviously, it's going to drill it deeper. It does have. I wouldn't call it the most. It's not a page turner, but I think there's a lot of. It's not a Grisham novel, but there's a lot of takeaway information in there, and it expands upon. We glossed over it in this hour. More than happy. It's free. It will be emailed to everyone who registered for this webinar. But take it a step further if you want. Reach out to me or my team. We are here and excited to engage with you. And again, we've been doing this for quite a while. I think we can provide a lot of value add to the community here.
Awesome. Sam, I'm going to ask you if you jump us to the last slide. At this point, I just want to take an opportunity on top of the ebook that the folks at VAR Staffing have made available to you all. I want to make sure that everyone is aware that through the suite of solutions that I talked about at the start of the call, if you're interested in specifically our business continuity, we've got an excellent opportunity for you guys to get entered into a sweepstakes just by simply attending a demo of either Replibit or BRC. Again, you can go to accientefolder.com, and then, or when Sam sends out his follow-up notes from today's session, just shoot him a response if you've got any other intrigue on some of the other information. Subsequently, we'll be sending a post-webinar survey that we'd love to get your feedback on as well for anyone who could take a few extra minutes to do. So, gentlemen, that does bring us to the top of the hour. I think we've touched base with most of the questions. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. James, Tom, any last thoughts before we bid our fair adieus?
Real quick, I'd like to thank eFolder, Tom. I love your program here. I think the MSP Ignition series is impactful and really can help grow your MSP. I'm honored and privileged to be a small part of that, and thank you and the eFolder Accient team, for including me.
Yeah, and thank you, James. And we also have a blog out there about this subject on channel E2E. And James, we will party in DC next week for sure. And on top of that, want to mention that August 15th, we have a webinar with Alex from Chartech. It's going to be a really great one on how to build and compensate your sales team. So continuing on the theme here.
Excellent. And James, I just wanted to ask for the benefit of the audience. You mentioned you bounce around quite a bit from event to event. You guys work at a national level?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, we are based in Dallas, Texas, so we are able to get pretty much anywhere in the country in about 3.5 hours. So that is absolutely correct. We specialize in all things MSP. We do confine ourselves, if there are any Canadian partners here, which I don't know if there are, if there aren't, but we have done search north of the border. It does present some challenges, but we can still talk to you. But for the most part, we have done search in Alaska and Hawaii, so we're all 50 states. We're here to help.
Excellent. Well, the next time you need an expedition to Hawaii for some talent research, you let me know.
Right.
I'm happy to join you there. So
take
with that,
everyone, the plane. So
that's right. That's right. Well, again, thank you, Tom. Thank you, James. Really appreciate all the insights you brought to the table today. And thanks to everyone who's been able to hang on the line a few minutes past our deadline here. So hopefully everyone has a great rest of your hump day, and we'll see you next time.